Update on final reporting from Dude Solutions software for the City Hall needs assessment and equipment replacement reserve. At the last meeting, attached to the agenda item was some raw data that was provided by their contracting company called Alpha, I can't think of their name. And so since then, staff has been working with Dude Solutions to complete the reporting setup, the final reporting setup. And we now have the first draft of the budget structure. It's like the budget, it's divided into two, the budget structure components, things that would include like the doors. Are you going to replace the doors or are they still functioning? But it's more structure related within the building that they've identified, here's the cost to replace them. And then there's a second report just listing equipment. So if you needed to change out a boiler in this building, that's something you can pick up and change out. So that's something more that we'd have to address if in fact it happened and it needed to be replaced. So I do have two reports here for your review. So they include in the equipment replacement also includes all the fleet and the IT type of related equipment too. And it's projected out on replacement cost by year. So you can see the detailed line items. So this is our first time creating this report and really getting to know the software better. So obviously you could fine tune it and make it better. But I thought this was a very good first attempt.
Can I ask a question while you're passing that out? Is there a definition other than in the audit report for what is included or should be included in the equipment that the equipment reserve fund is designed to cover? Has there been any kind of statement ever drafted?
What's designated by that fund, I haven't seen one, so I'll have to look and see if I can find a fund definition, if in fact it's that specific.
I think, Madam Chair, as one of the things that might be helpful is having at least a one-page articulation as to what the equipment reserve is intended to cover and any other parameters that may go around that, because that's kind of a standard operating document.
David, I'm completely in agreement with you. I'm kind of disappointed. We asked back in July to do this assessment, and I was expecting, a 20-page report that had an itemization of inventory, looked at the age, and had a physical assessment of what we had, itemized a current balance in an equipment replacement reserve, and then prepared an analysis of the requirement to replace and expand, and we would have a document in front of us that we could then look at and go, okay, right now we have a blank in our forecast.
But I don't mean to interrupt you, but I believe, I don't have it with me, but you supplied some, kind of the raw report last month.
So
And it had some of that, if I'm not mistaken.
So this report tells you what your needs would be each year in terms of spend.
This isn't the complete.
It's giving me numbers, but it's not giving me background. You're the forensic accountant. I was expecting.
This is built off of that raw data.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at all of that this is just a.
Summary. Did you see the
It's a
report?
pivot.
No, I know.
Okay.
I did. I mean, we asked for this back in June, we were here in November. We were told it was going to take 2 months to do the inventory and put a report together, and we don't have a report. We don't have.
Well, I don't
some-
think this is the final. Is that correct?
This is what I was able to accomplish. We uploaded the information, we worked and I had to actually get the numbers
This
before I
is
could.
your summary that you pulled together. This isn't the
Yes.
Dude Solution deliverable. Is that a correct statement? I think
I think Ken has to address that issue. I don't know the details behind what the
Okay.
final report's
And
going
but
to
this
we're in-
isn't meant to be the final report.
I know, but we're sitting here in April, and we were back in November in front of the council, and we said we wanted to have the final work product in front of us so we could determine if we had an issue, so the council could make a decision as part of the budget process for 1920. And we're not there. And we're, and we're,
Someone is giving you a list here in 1920, what's, estimated that they would need to replace. There is something, right?
this
That
would, this,
must be from the Dude report, right?
there is no way I would deliver something like this as a final product to a
This is
client of mine.
not Dude's deliverable. This is a report that our staff ran from the Dude, from the raw data.
Oh, okay,
So
so,
I
so,
think the deliverable that Dude is going to supply is forthcoming, and like you said, Ken,
which we recommended to council, 5-0 vote, get it done, and get it done as a deliverable when you're making your 1920 decisions in terms of the budget. And we're not there. I can't look at this and say, do we have a problem? Do we not have a problem? I don't have an analysis of where the equipment replacement reserve is right now, and how these numbers are they built into an operating budget, or are these additive? I mean, I was expecting a lot more information out of the money that the council was spending for this
but
analysis.
this isn't it. This isn't the final.
But we asked, but we asked to have it be completed, and we made a point 2 or 3 times of saying it has to be done in order for the council to make decisions during 1920. Sitting here in April, we're not going to have a report in May or June when the council's making decisions.
Well,
Can I ask a question to Sharon? Is this analysis, could you tell me right now what you would recommend is the contribution that needs to go into the reserve fund starting next year and go out 4 or 5 years? Have you been able to quantify that?
I think that this quantifies it between the building components and the equipment replacement. It quantifies it. It's determined whether or not, I think it's up for discussion, whether or not what you want to focus on. Is it the equipment replacement, or is it some of the building components? Some of it's already due to be replaced, and that's what's in the column, the very first column. A lot of it's, and if you, in the Alpha report, which I attached to the agenda item, it did explain all of that.
Okay, let me re-ask the question. For fiscal year 20, are you, would you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Sharon, believe me, I'm just trying to understand this. Have we got to a position where we can tell Mark that the police needs to go back in their budget and put, $50,000 or $20 or $300,000 into the equipment reserve contribution that was in the police budget historically? Have we got to that level where we know what that number should be?
I think these would provide a good basis of what needs to be used, what needs to be allocated through that equipment allocation. So if you looked at 2020, you'd see some of the police vehicles are listed on this that need to be replaced, and that's typically what runs through the equipment replacement reserve. It also identifies any of the IT computer equipments, which also runs through the equipment replacement reserve. And it also identifies some of the actual equipment-related items that can be replaced within the city.
Okay, but I'm asking a little bit different
City
question,
Hall,
Sharon.
sorry.
what I'm trying to find out, I understand this is what would have to be expended in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. But what kind of money do we have to ask Mark to include in his budget so that we have an adequate reserve in order to fund out into those future years? Because it's not just looking at what are we gonna be replacing in year 1 or year 2. It's looking at out over the long horizon. A reserve analysis is a function that I have to agree with Mark on, that I would assume it has the asset identified, we have a tag number, should be next to the asset, it was placed in service on XYZ date, it was originally cost $48,000, $1,200, that's in the data.
I didn't print it out here on this spreadsheet.
I think that's what Mark is trying to get back to.
It's in there.
It may all be there, but then you go out and say, okay, that asset, it's got 4 years of remaining useful life, so 4 years out, we're gonna have to replace it, and we think it's gonna cost $68,412.
That's what these numbers represent.
It does say that, right? Your line by line, it says what you have to spend.
So,
But these are such rounded numbers, it's very hard for me to,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Maybe in a different way of explaining it, maybe where, let's say for 20, it says $35,000 for a Ford Fusion, that just means it's gonna come out. But are you looking for each year, let's say with that, the Ford Crown Victoria, the 2008, let's pretend we bought it for $20,000 and this on a 5-year equipment replacement, that each year we're indicating how much money we have to put into the equipment replacement fund for that, for each of the vehicles?
Let me pull out a reserve analysis and I'll bring it to our meeting tomorrow. And I've got a working example that I've used in other situations. And I think I can find one in the morning.
I think part of the problem here, especially with the timing, is that we're not quite sure exactly what everybody's looking for. If we can get on the same page, and maybe I can meet with you also about exactly what you want, so it's not you have expectation, we deliver something, and it's a little off, that we need to get it.
And I'll put this in context. There was a former council member who firmly believed that we had more money than we needed in an equipment replacement reserve, and felt that a decision to not set aside funds to augment that was prudent. And as an FAC member, I commented, I have no basis to determine if that's a correct analysis or incorrect. So we have $2 million plus money in the bank in this equipment replacement reserve. I was expecting Dude Solutions to go through and do a citywide assessment of all the equipment, fleet, radios, everything.
Whatever's covered in that.
Whatever's covered, that they would identify when it was purchased, effectively when it was going to be no longer effective, would put a schedule together, and typically what you would do is over a radio has a 5-year life, so you take the cost of that radio, you would amortize it over 5 years, and that equipment replacement reserve would take into account that in year 5, I'm going to have to, and that we would have this comprehensive study that we could put down there, and it would tell us, Jim was right. We're overfunded. We have $1 million more in our equipment replacement reserve than we need. Great news. So we can take $1 million out of the equipment replacement reserve, set it aside into the TBD fund. Are we going to use that money to prepay pensions, or are we going to use that money to deal with our infrastructure issues? That was, and I think I've been pretty black and white in saying that that was my expectation. And we laid that out in June or July. We brought it back up in November or December in front of the council, and we said we want this done so that when you're making your budget decisions for the 1920 year, we had done our reserve analysis, and we were waiting as an FAC to make a recommendation whether we're going to reduce the reserve from 50 to 45%. We were waiting for that recommendation until we got the Dude Solutions, because we were going to, if we were overfunded, I think as a committee, we were going to say, we have this great report, we're overfunded by $1 million. FAC, we're going to recommend to council as part of your budget process for 1920. You take $1 million out of the equipment replacement reserve, you put it in your TBD, and at the same time, with that information, we would collectively make a decision.
I think we understand about, but I think the question is, and I believe that there's a much more comprehensive report coming. We saw kind of a early version of it, but with these annual spend numbers that they've laid out, can we not determine what the reserve levels should be just based on this
No. No.
Okay, so,
Mark is right. It has to be laid out on a schedule, and I'll bring an example down, because one of the things that's going on right now, in all the departments, we've put nothing into the, operating expenses have not incurred $0 to go into the equipment reserve fund for the last year and this year. As we've done those forecasts going out into the future, it also includes $0 because we have used that as our trend line. And we know that that's an unrealistic expectation, because you are utilizing the squad cars, the backhoes are being used, the the pickup trucks are being driven, and they're being obsoleted or they're being consumed. And we're not putting anything into the sinking fund to replace them. And I think the point that Mark and I are kind of coming back to is we know that there's going to be a day when we have to start putting more dollars into the operating budget in order to fund future replacements, but we don't know how big that number is and how soon we have to do it. And if Mark is right that there's the hypothesis that it's overfunded and we transfer that money out, that probably means we need to start putting money into the operating budget today or tomorrow, because we have to rebuild it. And you can't just look at the annual outflows. We have to look at the flow process of, you know, what's in the fund right now, what are all the assets that it's supposed to be covering, and how quickly are they going to be needed to be replaced. And you can't determine that from this document. Even, this is a summary level document. I know it's not the detail, but
Can I get clarification? I hear what's going on, but I'm just gonna do the math. If the fund balance right now is $2 million, and this says my spend is gonna be, if I added up 2019 and 2018, close to 300,000. Now I have $1.7 million. And then I move to 2020, this has indicated we have about 160 to spend. So I continue to subtract that out of my fund balance until it runs zero, similar to your capital analysis when you did your forecast. Does that tell me when when I run out of the funds and I need to then start building up, or a few years prior to that, start building up my allocation again?
well, I would want to see the detail before I answered that question.
So the detailed data is behind these numbers, so we have the raw data, it's all set up like that. I'll have to work with Ken a little bit more and see if there's some other type of report we can run. This was just me pulling out, here's all the items that we uploaded into it. This is what Alpha identified, and they went through and identified on each item the useful life, what it's used for, what's the components. There's a lot more data in here. So it does
appreciate that.
have all that in, you know, the current, a lot of it, if you look at the building, those already expired. So if you look at the building component, there's a large number that's in that. But that's different from the equipment replacement listing.
I guess if my firm was hired to do this, I would be
I see
producing
what
a nice executive summary that would lay out your current equipment replacement reserve balance is X. you've asked us to do an analysis over the next 10 years of what this balance is supposed to be used for to replace the equipment. We do not want to draw that balance down to zero. So we're recommending a plan based upon the inventory you've given us of how you're going to draw down balance, but also replace on an annual basis, because you never want to draw a balance down to zero. And at the end of that executive summary, the result would be, based on our analysis, you're overfunded or you're underfunded. And our recommendation is to do the following. And there would be an action item. And the action item would be, you're overfunded or you're underfunded.
But did we ask Dude Solutions to do
Yes.
that particular piece? I know for sure. we asked them to do an equipment
Absolutely.
Did you guys get together on this at all?
Absolutely.
Because they don't seem, I mean, I never thought of them as a financial
Okay.
firm
Is anyone,
that does that kind of.
is anyone familiar with homeowners associations? Okay. Well, they are. That is one of the cornerstones of homeowners association are reserve analyses. And that's exactly the model I would bring in tomorrow. I could probably pull it up on my, I can't get it on my computer right now. But the methodology is exactly the same. In a homeowners association, you go through all the component parts of a building and you do exactly as been articulated, when was it put in place in service, when does it need to be replaced, and you build your fund in order to cover that. And sometimes, because the funds go like this, up and down, and if you can't just fund one particular year or have that earmarked, because if you have a large expenditure in one year, the fund may be completely gone down, but you've got things that are coming in the following years. So it's really there is a methodology that it's a combination of accounting and valuation people that have put together, and it's commonly called a reserve study. And I think maybe the biggest problem we had is Mark and I were thinking of a reserve study over here, and other people thought it over here. We weren't on the same wavelength. But there is such an animal, and I'll bring an example in.
And
So-
maybe,
Sounds like the data's
And
there.
Let
it sounds like
me
we need to
get-
get clarification on if
Let-
they're
let
gonna do
me-
that piece.
Yeah, and maybe a little discussion here. So just to provide direction, because if I go back and I have a conversation with Dude Solutions, and with Ken involved, asking them for a more formal report like that, they're gonna say, this building components, we've already told you, these have already expired. And if they build that into the reserve analysis, it's depleted.
Well, that's something we ought to know.
But these aren't things, these are things that are still functioning within the building. They're not necessarily need to be replaced at this point in time.
Understand, but that's where judgment gets applied.
That's the analysis.
But
The
is
whole-
that our,
the whole thing, Sharon, the whole thing that drove this
okay,
is Jim, in public, said he felt the equipment replacement reserve was overfunded. And he made that comment many, many times. As an FAC, we said, okay, well, as part of what we're doing, developing pro formas, developing forecasts, if we have an overfunded reserve, we should know that, so let's do a study and have
Let me-
somebody
let me go
objectively tell
back
us that.
to a conversation that we've had on the city hall. So we've talked about the city hall. These building components are what has been quoted as Band-Aids. Do we do these, or is there another projection out there?
Well, no,
That's
no.
what where the bigger numbers lie.
What I would argue, let's say that there's a compressor on the roof that indicated that should have been replaced last year. And it's still functioning, and we say, hey, we're gonna Band-Aid it along another year. Well, then 100% of that money to replace that condenser should remain in the fund. It should be already banked. But we also ought to take a look at replacing that compressor. Is the money that's banked for that particular asset adequate to replace it in today's dollars?
So
Because it may not be.
that's what's on, the condenser would be on this list. And it's not in that building component list. So it is part of this list to give you an idea of what
Okay.
your
but-
future spend would be.
But my point is that, let's say that there's $1 million of things that should have been done in this building
Sure.
before today. That ought to take the first $1 million of the $2 million equipment reserve fund, and we can't touch that, because we're gonna need that, whether it's today or tomorrow or 2 years from now. And then we continually are utilizing assets that we're not putting money aside for as an operational expense, which is, I think, a lot of our concern going forward. It's really, it's 2, 3 concerns. But I don't know whether we need to go back into the budgets in this next year and say, hey, we need to start putting more money into the reserves. Maybe it's not the same amount we did before, but we have to put something in there. And so we have adequate funding 2 years from now to replace squad cars.
Okay.
I use that as an example.
Okay, so let's land the plane here. So, I think we need to get clarification on the Dude Solutions contract, the expectations. Are they finished with their complete inventory analysis? And is the expectation that they're going to do a full formal reserve analysis? If they're not, we need to get that done. So we'll need to figure
Or
out.
do we have the data to get it done?
Do we have the data to get it
Yeah.
done, and
Which
how
is
will
my
we
guess
get
we
that
do.
done? Who's
Yeah, I
got the
think so.
capability to do that? And then maybe we can't wait until the end of May for that. So maybe we talk about that, offline, but then in May, perhaps we come back to this meeting and let's just finalize. Let's have Dude Solutions present their final thing, or Ken come in and present what they've finally submitted, and we're gonna call it done. But in the meantime, in the next couple of weeks, it would be good. When's he back? Is he gonna be back soon?
The day before the next council, so the 13th?
Oh,
I
okay.
think the next council meeting is the 14th. He's back the day before.
Something like
And then
that.
you're gone. Yeah. Okay,
If I can make a suggestion.
yes.
Perhaps I can meet with Vice Chair Young and Councilmember McGowan and discuss some of the expectations, what you would like to see, and take your example of, the reserve analysis, and then meet with Dude Solutions and with Sharon and maybe Ken if he's available, but talk about our expectations and what we want to see, and see if their reports can pull that information out from that raw data. Because my understanding, there's a lot of information. Maybe we're just not asking for it right. Maybe they don't understand our expectations, but there's definitely a miscommunication on what's expected and what's being delivered that I think I need to meet with Dude Solutions and really iron out. And then
I think you're right on.
I think you're completely on point.
Okay, I'll take care of that.
Thank you very much. Okay,